I was asked to do a session on smart cities and IoT. First, for the few of you that are not aware, we at Sensitive we are a product company, and we have two different products. We have our strips, our sensors, and we have our platform. There are other sessions that deep dives in both of these, but for the strips, I'm going to leave that for this session and focus on IoT architecture and smart city and use cases, and why it's a good idea to use a horizontal kind of approach when working with IoT. Myself, I have a background working as an IT architect, always somewhere in between the business side and the tech side of things. I have been in private companies, but in the public sector for over a decade. The last 5 years before joining Sensitive, I was working for the city of Malmö, where we were working with the digital agenda for Malmö, which a lot of cities and municipalities are working on. Learned a lot in that process. But within the agenda, we had a couple of focus areas, and one of the focus areas was smart city. So I became more involved in the smart city parts of that work. And when working with smart city, we joined forces with a couple of the different departments, mostly the technical oriented departments, talking about parks and streets and buildings, and the public housing company was with us. The city as a physical place with the streets and everything. But for me, smart city also involves the more soft parts of what the municipality and a city does provide, meaning elderly care and social services and schools and all of these other things, which is actually a main part of what the city does. But we focused on, for that project, we focused on the technical departments initially, which I think is kind of common, that you start working with IoT, doing kind of water level measurement, traffic flows, all these kind of use cases. But when we worked in that project, I saw that a number of the ongoing projects in the different lines of businesses did actually include IoT in some form. And that, gave me the gut reaction that, so this is a common thing that happens everywhere. Then we, from a central standpoint, must start thinking about how do you do that in a quite large city with all these different use cases and needs, and still maintain security perspectives, information management perspective, and the reuse of data in different types of scenarios and so forth. So what I did was I made an architecture clearly defining what an IoT platform, the technical platform, should contain, what features should be in that platform, and actually what features should not be in that platform. And then I started looking. This was back in 2017, so a couple of years ago. And IoT is still fresh, I think. But I started to look for a platform that could match my architecture. And then I came across Sensitive, and I really liked what they were doing. So first we purchased the platform, so it's now in use in Malmö. And then after half a year, I resigned and started work for Sensitive, and now here I am, recording sessions. So yeah. So when I say that you know you have I see the pattern that you have different needs, but you need to bring it all together in one platform. I see it much as yet another IT delivery from a central standpoint, where IT has been delivering a number of capabilities and services and functions towards the different lines of businesses for decades, like networking, identity and access management, email, data storage, data warehouse, and all these kind of services is not something that you do outside in each department. It just doesn't make sense. And from my standpoint, you should have the same kind of approach when thinking about IoT. Competences are scarce, and there is no need for multiple technical platforms to do it. So yeah, you need the difficult parts, I would say, if talking about IoT, is not the tech parts. We got you covered. We and other companies out there are doing great stuff with IoT. So the technology in itself is very seldom a big problem, and tech stuff we can always sort out. The difficult parts, I would say, is more related to how to work together. Both, the IT department and the different lines of businesses, who does what and who is responsible for what, and who pays for what, and stuff like that. But then that, becomes even a bigger challenge when you need to all of a sudden organize a relationship between the public housing company and the central IT, which is not delivering other stuff to the public housing company. How do you start working and collaborate on that? In some cities, this just works fine, but in a lot of places, I see that as a big obstacle that one need to be aware of. And I thought that I would give some examples on when this becomes a problem. If we can agree to let's not talk about the tech will sort itself out, but focus on the use cases and how to move forward in what I would, if we're talking about smart city, there are so many benefits from using modern technology and IoT that you just can't, not do it because otherwise we won't be able to act on, the elderly, the growing, what do you call it, the elderly population, the demographical challenges that we all are facing throughout the Western world. We live much longer and we need to maintain the same service level towards our citizens, and how do we make that happen without using smart technology, and how do we then make this work together? So first off, there are so many the smart city as a concept has become kind of watered out somewhat. And there's a lot of niche players out there doing like vertical solutions, like we are experts in traffic or in water management, or we do elderly care and we are experts in that, and everything is connected. The problem then pops up when you need to get these different things to work together. You might be able to reach your project goal and actually reach the effects from what you're trying to achieve, but the smartness will be on the low end if you're not starting to make sure that all of these data assets and functionality actually works together. And that is our vision here at Sensitive, and that is our goal, to make the city or the society smart. So one example that I thought that I would give is case where I mentioned the demographic development, where we're getting older and older. So at least here in Sweden, because you have paid taxes, you have done your job for, I don't know, 45 years or more. And then when you get old, the society is supposed to take care of you, right? But as an individual, what you would like is to, be your own master, so to speak. You would like to take care of yourself and be able to live in your own home as long as possible, without being a burden to your relatives or the society. So that is something that you would like as an individual. But from a city or municipal perspective, that is a common interest, because it costs money to deliver elderly services, right? So what you would like to do is to detect and be able to work early when you see that something is a bit off in behavior. So we are doing a project right now where we are actually doing this. So if you have an apartment and you have one or two people living there, a bit on the older side, there's no problem. Everything just works fine. But what you can then do is to add a couple of tech to that apartment or house or whatever it is. So we are doing a project where we are doing night lights when you need to get up at night and do your thing. We actually light up so you can find your way to the bathroom and back again, and then we turn it off. We also detect actually the focus there is not windows but doors, so like the patio door and the front door. So we make sure that the doors are closed, and if they are open, we detect that. And of course you should be able to come in and out and close the door again. But if you tend to forget to close the door, then we will detect that, and we can set different timers and react on that. The doors are not supposed to be open perhaps during night and stuff like that. Another case that we're doing in that project is water flow. So if you forget to turn off the water, and there's a certain amount of water that runs over a certain time period, and where we, based on our platform, can decide that now the water the tap is open unintentionally. And what we do then is we shut the water off. And if it was wrong from the platform, the tech, to do so, then you need to start it over again. And then just push a button, a physical button, and then water is on again. And the same goes for the oven. If you forget the oven, and there's a timer and a certain amount of kilowatts being used, then we shut off the oven, just to make sure that there's no fire and problem. But again, if it's a problem, the oven should be on, then just push the button and it's on again. This is an example of like appless, hassle-free kind of IoT taking place, which doesn't interfere with the individual ordinary life. You just go on about it as you have done, for the last 80 years and keep doing it. The music happens now then, because what we're doing now, we're collecting data. So we know when you go to the toilet, we know how much water you consume and how much power you're consuming, how much the doors are open. Most likely we would have added some temperature and the humidity sensors and stuff like that to gather some more data. Now, there's a collection of data here that is relevant for a number of parties. First off, you have the relatives to the tenants, the people who lives in the house, in the home. If it's okay, and if the individual that lives there says that it's okay, then, if I forget the water on, just drop a text to my daughter or something like that. And the same goes for, you can configure it any way you would like. So, and then what will happen then is the daughter in this case, she's gonna, detect a pattern. She's gonna see how her mother actually feels and how she's doing. And she's gonna be, accustomed to, receiving a text in the middle of the night because she's, up again. But that's okay. That has been so now for, 3 months. But all of a sudden, you get, 4 texts, and it starts to become a different pattern. What happens then is the daughter is then very, very early alerted to that there is a behavioral change in some form. And then she can, take action and respond to that in some form. Perhaps first off, talk to her mother, are you okay? But then in the next phase, also perhaps talk to the elderly care, or however you are organized. Okay, so that's a given, the relatives. But the next then might be, if you are in a situation where it's possible, then the city servants would be most likely very interested in that data. It's not about, spying on people. It's about, being able to very early in the process detect that, hey, there's something going on here. We need to address this quite early in order to make sure everything's fine. So if the city servants would be able to tap into that data and pull it out in a secure fashion, then, everybody's happy about that, right? Third party, or fourth, might be the let's say it's the public housing company that this elderly people live in an apartment there. So the public housing company would also be very interested in that data, right? So now we have a situation where we have the individual in itself, the relatives, and the municipality, and the public housing company. So we have 4 different stakeholders here. I'm actually quite sure that there are a number of privately held companies that also, if they were allowed to tap in, might be interested in detecting kind of behavioral changes and being able to offer services in some form. Now we're talking perhaps integrity perspectives that would make that difficult, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of different stakeholders, but at the same time it's not 4 different platforms and different vertical use cases. It's one platform and a number of use cases, and then on top of that a number of stakeholders that pulls that data and reacts on it and make that fly. So the tech, like I said earlier, is not a problem then. The problem pops up. Who is paying for the technology? Who is managing and maintaining this environment? Who is responsible for the information? Who is the information owner? Is it the tenant in itself, or is it the public housing company who owns the infrastructure? Or is it the municipality who perhaps have financed parts of this? We at Sensitive, we don't have a ready-to-go answer on that question. What I'm saying is that when we start to look at smart city, we need to make sure that, well, I'm a bit biased here because I represent Sensitive, so make sure that the technology is in place, that you work in a kind of horizontal architecture, and make sure that you have, what do you call that in English? Make sure that you own your own digitalization and your own development of your business. And make sure that you own the data. So you have the possibility to actually use that data in any way you like. And make sure that the data is reusable in multiple use cases. So I'm sure that if you give me a couple of minutes, I would be able to produce a number of other examples apart from this. The elderly couple here wanting to live at home. But if you think about things like water levels in the city and then the canals, which is interesting data for both the municipality and other parties that needs to be aware of the situation. If you think about public transportation services, where is the bus right now? Is that the owner of that information? Is it just a public transport company, or should it just make sure that everybody can use that data and make smart things? There are so many use cases that needs to be put into a common central solution and infrastructure to make sure everything fits together and works together. We are at Sense1, we are fully aware of that sometimes it makes sense to do a vertical. There are some very, very niched and skilled platforms that does, for instance, I don't know, traffic lights control. We have a generic platform. I'm sure we could, with some add-ons and feature, we could fix that, but it's not ready to go plug and play to do it. And there are some vendors that have, more or less ready to go plug and play solutions that does only that. When you do go ahead and do the vertical solutions, make sure that these solutions, that you can pull out the data and bring them into the central platform in order to reuse the data in different scenarios. And there is no conflict between these two. You can do both at the same time. So together with me today, I also have, he's not on camera today, I'm not sure why, but Fredrik Westman is here. He is one of our co-founders, and he says he want to ask some questions. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So we gathered a couple of questions that we received from previous discussions, and one of them is, why should I, as a citizen, care about IoT? And why should I care about smart cities?
Okay, so why do we do smart cities in the first place? Today, most of the operational day-to-day business is based on like a schedule, or it's based on pure experience and knowledge from the co-workers, which is great. But when starting to use IoT and starting to do the smart things, first off, you will gain some insights, right? You will all of a sudden know stuff that you didn't know before. So, okay, based on that, you can make decisions, which, we came quite far with gut feeling and experience and, reading books and understanding things because we're smart. But when we add IoT to the mix, then, things will all of a sudden be much clearer. So you can make decisions, which then is a benefit for the citizen. And then it gives you the possibility to go from the scheduled ways of doing things to a fashion where you do things when needed, right? The classic example there is usually waste management. Let's not empty the waste bin until it's, 80% full. Instead of emptying it when it's 20% full, just because it's Wednesday and it's 10 o'clock. Or even worse, when it's 175% full, meaning it's a chaotic situation. Yeah, it's a mess there, right? So let's empty it when it's 80%. It just makes sense, right? And then it won't require more resources to do that. Most likely less resources to do that. But the quality then will be higher because you won't have the 175% situations. So, and that goes for most of, or many at least, of the different things that you do in a city, right? So you move from scheduled to on a when you need basis. And then the next step comes, right? When you can automate things. So some of these things you might be able to automate with putting out not just sensors but actuators, so you can react on values. And a theme for this Thursday is water, right? So if you have a water leak, then turn off the water if you have the valve. So all of a sudden we've saved the municipality X number of euros because we did something automatically without human interference. Eventually you're going to need to call the plumber to fix the problem later, but at least we avoided the damage. So, and to top off, next step in that is of course machine learning, which we are working with a lot here at Sensitive, where you can actually forecast and say that in 2 weeks we're going to have a water leak there, because the behavior of the water and the maintenance period is so. With machine learning you can detect things before they even happen. So what's in it then for the citizen? Well, the municipality, the city, will be able to deliver the service that they are set to do, based on what they do. The city will be able to actually continue performing the duties that they are set to do, with most likely at a lower cost, but with hopefully a higher quality on things. That's what everybody wants, right? And I when I was in the city, I used to say that show me an example of digitalization. No, show me an example of business development in your specific operational area, no matter what it is. Give me an example of how you develop your business without a pinch of digital in it, right? So we need to be able to use modern technology and move forward. But like I said earlier in this session, it's not really about the technology in itself. The tech is there, both Sensitive and a lot of our partners and we're ready to go. But the problem lies, I would say, in business models, collaboration models, and security and integrity perspectives, and which then relates to your question, what's in it for me as a citizen? Well, you can rest assured, dear citizen, that we're going to take care of the data. It's not going to be shared with any third parties or anything like that. The city has a very important mission there to make sure that they actually really care about the data and manage that in a good way.
If I'm a citizen in a smart city and I want to be in control of my data, what's important for the city or to build that?
Okay, so your question is, how do I as a citizen know what data you have about me as a citizen? And how can I be sure that the city is handling my data in a proper way?
Exactly, to keep the sense of integrity, and just like the internet, it's an important part.
Well, I think the question is good, it's spot on, but it's a tad off like IoT, I would say. This is why we have GDPR, right? So it's perfectly written down very clearly what responsibilities the municipality has in terms of maintaining and controlling information. You can actually call, you live here in Lund, right? You can call the municipality and say, hi, it's very clear, where is my data and how do you manage it? And they are obliged to answer your question, really. So in terms of a smart city and IoT, there is, of course, always a trade-off between, to digitalize means that you, in some ways, introduce more risks, right? So, for instance, here in Sweden, we have something called Mobilt BankID. So the banks have an identification system which makes us as citizen able to log on to the tax authorities and different services throughout the public society. So if the Mobilt BankID is going down, which happened just a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden everything stops, right? So we need to make sure from Sensitive, when delivering the IoT platform, that whatever happens, make sure that we can still turn on the light. If we are in elderly care and measuring the pulse or whatever we do, we need to make sure that the systems are up and running. But then again, on the operative side at the municipality, you need to make sure that you have the digital competence and the insights in how things works, and make sure that you view information as a strategic asset, and that is, it's not okay to just play around with it. It is what it is, and we need to take care of it. So there is a shift going on, I would say, within municipalities, where you are, traditionally you have worked with application management and maintaining a business system, the ERP or the health records or whatever it is. What you have worked with is the system and the functionality, and not really actually the data inside it. The information is, quite often stored in proprietary kind of formats, and it's very difficult to integrate to it and pull the data. And if you pull the data, it's not going to look exactly like the other data, and then you need to. It's been a hustle. So with the IoT, what we do is we just put out the sensor and then we feed the data, and someone needs to be information owner, right? Most likely the business unit head of that, the CXO level kind of manager. She is going to be, it's most often a she nowadays, which is, great. So it might be a he. They're going to be information owners all of a sudden without a proper system below it, which is a new thing happening. So how do I use that information? Who is being able to use that information? And to what other system is it okay that I deliver this data? So this question has been on the table for decades, but not in a crystal clear way that IoT pushes you in that direction. So information management as a thing is up and coming.
You mean that it's a new part of the cities' organizations or municipalities' organization?
Yeah, well, the skills and the competences and the insights in managing information and not managing a system. It's a huge difference, to just receive an update on a piece of software and wow, now we got new functionality. Now focus will shift from that towards maintaining data and as such, which is a new kind of pattern that I see, and it's going to be essential, when you want all these use cases to work together, that you are, good at working with information management in a broader sense. I usually say that if you are a librarian and you want to make a change, a career move, then start working with information management, because you're going to double your salary and you're going to have a lot of fun while doing it. Because librarians, it's all about information management. So
they actually already have that in their organization then?
Yeah, they can just reschool them. The problem then would be, who knows what book I should borrow. So we need to fill that up from the back end though. So I don't know. But it's a good question, the citizen perspective on things. But the general answer is that, we need to take use of modern technology to be able to keep delivering the municipality services, and hopefully, at a higher quality and a lower cost. That's the whole, trick in the end.
So talk a lot about vertical and horizontal.
Yeah.
And is that only the IT architects or the IT department at the municipality that should care about it, or should it be all the way up to the politicians, or who should care about it?
Well, everybody should care about it. You know, if you think, like I said earlier, if you think that you know, think of business development without IT in it. Well, you know, some ways of doing that, I'm sure there are, but so the politicians need to fully embrace that we're going into a digital era. And how do we make that happen? I don't know. I'm kind of my confidence in the politicians are not, you know, at top notch. But if you take it away from the politicians, look at the, you know, the senior and the upper management in the cities. They need to really take their responsibility and allocate resources for digitalization and sort out the problems with, you know, who is funding things. And if you pay, I don't know, a couple of million euros for a project, but the effects happen elsewhere, is that okay to do? Yeah, it must be okay to do. Is it okay to try and make an error? Yeah, it must be. You need to try and do things and, you know, to move forward. So both from like a cultural standpoint and how you you know, do things and go about things, making sure that the collaboration approach is there, sorting out the legal stuff. So you need to allocate resources to do digitalization. It's not, you know, just making sure that the tech companies, you know, that we can buy the tech. It's about allocating all these other, you know, skills that you need to make this happen, really. There are some good examples. I usually bring up the city of Helsingborg here in Sweden, where, you know, they are doing some very, very cool things, and they are always like open for dialogue, and there's a lot of different organizations being part of that. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
So everyone should care about if it's horizontal or if it's vertical.
Well, if it's horizontal or vertical, well, that typically, you know, lands somewhere in the direction to like the enterprise architects within the municipality or the IT architects. But you know, typically the central IT department, they are good at what they do usually, right? They understand digital and IT and stuff like that, and vice versa. Outside in the business line of business, I mean, the teacher and the principal, they're gonna know how to do school things, right? But these need to meet up and work together, and that's when things start to happen. So if it's vertical or horizontal or a combination and stuff like that, you can sort that out during the process. But yeah, of course, from my standpoint, you should look at, you know, horizontal open standards, interoperability, making sure that things fit together as a starting point. And if needed, you might, you know, do in some other way, but then being ready to pay the cost for that, so to speak.
What do you think, if you take a city as Lund, about 100,000 citizens, and speed up 5 or 10 years ahead?
Yeah.
If you picture those two different scenarios of a vertical smart city or a horizontal smart city, how do you envision them, or what's your vision between those two scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, there are already, you know, there are some countries in this world which might not be all that, you know, democratic, okay? So they have some plus, you know, some good things with these kind of countries, because one thing is that they can do a proper smart city from a start. You just point with the whole hand saying, this is how we do things. It doesn't feel all that comfortable and cozy, but, you know, it's going to be...
It's one way of doing it.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. And then you have some cities in the Western world, a number of cities quite big here in Europe, without, you know, mentioning them by name, that, you know, at least from the 4-color print perspective, when you look at the folders and the smart kind of approach that they show, when you really look into it and see how have you done things and how does everything connect to each other and work together, Well, it doesn't really. Okay, so the waste bins is one vertical, and the traffic management is another one. Then you have the I don't know, the power grid and managing that. That's some completely different things, and these things doesn't play together, right? So these cities, they are going to end up, you know, in 5, 10, or 20 years in a situation where, you know, they are in a classic spaghetti soup, where you have different things, you need to integrate them, and it's going to fall apart in some form sooner or later. So yeah, there was yeah, well, if you compare that to then, if a city chooses to do, you know, they sort out the collaboration and the business model, and they choose to work together, and make sure that the verticals that are there is part of the overall system architecture, so to speak. Then these cities, they're gonna, you know, flourish. Things are going to happen. They are going to be safer places, more energy aware, and, you know, things will pick up speed and happen for these cities. So yeah. Yeah, but in conclusion, you need to have the skills and competences. You need to train your staff or recruit or work with the companies that have the skills. You need to allocate resources. And yeah, hey, I'm looking at you, the one with the money bag, the higher politicians or exec, allocate resources. And, you know, it's going to take some time, but sooner or later, you're going to get payback on that. Don't try to take the cheap way out on things. Yeah, I think that is all for this session. It was sort of an open session. Good talk, Fredrik. And yeah, we're always interested in, you know, in hearing about your, you know, plans and where you are at in terms of smart city and how you view it. You know, our standpoint or my standpoint is just one. You know, there are a lot, and there's a lot of clever people out there. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.